Hi there, I'm Cressida. 2 weeks ago, my sister stood in a room full of people and screamed, "You ruined our lives!" And my parents? They clapped. I didn't yell back. I didn't cry. I walked out, with nothing but my silence. But within 24 hours, I had 100 missed calls. What changed? Why did they need me then, after spending years erasing me from pictures, from conversations, from their version of the truth? Isn't it strange how a family can pretend you never existed, until they need you to fix what they broke? Do you know that feeling? Because if you do, you might want to hear the rest of this. I stood near the back, by the French doors that opened onto the rooftop terrace, holding a clipboard no one asked for, and answering questions no one had bothered to direct at me. The air inside smelled like catered shrimp and synthetic florals. A dozen tables gleamed with name cards, linen napkins, and the kind of centerpieces you only rent for big events. And this was big, Celine's event. 1 year since the launch of Empower Her Academy, her pride and joy. A room full of funders, influencers, and family, celebrating what they thought was hers alone. No one introduced me. No one asked if I'd like to say something, despite spending 2 years building the back-end systems and designing most of the workshop modules in her curriculum. I hadn't been invited as a contributor. I hadn't even been mentioned. My name hadn't been spoken the entire evening, but my hands were the ones making sure the AV guy had the right cables. My laptop had the playlist queued. My jacket pocket held the list of last-minute guest swaps and dietary restrictions. And when the mic started buzzing, sharp, erratic, like a dying cicada, I was the first to move. I crossed the room quietly, reached under the podium to reset the wireless transmitter. I didn't touch the controls. I didn't say a word. Celine turned, still smiling at the crowd. Then she saw me. "What are you doing?" she hissed through her teeth. There's feedback. I think." "Of course there is," she snapped, stepping forward into the light. Then louder, into the microphone. "Every time something matters, you find a way to ruin it." My hand froze mid-air. "You ruined our lives," she said again, voice rising. "Why do you always have to mess everything up?" There was an audible gasp. I felt all eyes shift. The room went still, brittle. For a second, I thought someone might say something, might step in, soften the blow. But then I heard it. A single pair of hands clapping. Then another. I turned to look. Verna, our mother, was applauding. Not slow, not ironic, just deliberate, like she was endorsing a political speech. "That's enough, Celine," I whispered. But no one else said it. Not my father, Grant, who just rubbed his temple and avoided eye contact. Not Aunt June, who gave a tight smile and took a sip of something pink. Not one of the sponsors or community leaders, who just watched like they were afraid of interrupting a performance. I stepped back. That's when the donor approached. A woman in a slate gray pantsuit with oversized pearls and an accent I couldn't quite place. She tilted her head politely. "Excuse me, are you the operations assistant? Could you grab a few extra napkins for table 3? We're short." Celine didn't correct her. Verna didn't either, neither did I. I just nodded once and walked away. By the time I made it to the kitchen hallway, the room behind me had returned to laughter and clinking glasses. The string quartet had picked up again. Someone had uncorked another bottle. I reached for my coat. Not the one I arrived in. It was too cold for that now, but the one I kept in my car for emergencies. I didn't look back as I opened the service exit and stepped out into the alley behind the venue. It was still warm outside, but my arms felt like stone. They hadn't just chosen her. They clapped, not for her success, but against me. I drove without thinking, took the long route through downtown, avoiding intersections where memories lived. I didn't cry, I didn't speak, I didn't scream. But the silence, that was louder than anything. By the time I got to my car, the city felt quieter than it should have been on a Friday night. Not silent, but dull. Like the volume had been turned down just enough to make me question whether I'd actually heard what I heard back there. I sat in the driver's seat for a minute, with my hands still on the wheel, the engine humming under me like a question I didn't want to answer. I didn't go home. Instead, I parked 2 blocks from a 24-hour gas station off the interstate. I got out, kept my head down, and walked inside under the flickering fluorescent lights. A teenager in a red vest mumbled something that might have been "good evening," but didn't bother to make eye contact. I grabbed a granola bar and a water bottle I didn't really want and paid in cash, more out of instinct than necessity. Then I asked him, "Is there a motel nearby that doesn't care who checks in late?" He pointed with a single finger, without even glancing up. "That way, 2 blocks. Look for the green sign that's missing the T." The sign was there, all right. Mo L blinked like it had seen too much and decided to stop trying. The lobby smelled like dust and something sour trying to pretend it was citrus. I told the man behind the counter I needed a room for one night, and he didn't ask for ID. Just slid a key card across the counter with a room number written in Sharpie and said, "Microwave works. Don't touch the coffee maker." I said, "Thank you," but I didn't mean it. He didn't hear it anyway. The room looked exactly how I expected. Beige walls, fake wood furniture, and a comforter with a pattern no one had chosen on purpose. The kind of place that could make you feel lonelier than actually being alone. I set my purse on the chair and sat at the edge of the bed, still in my black dress. I didn't change. Didn't even take off my shoes. I just sat there, listening to the thump of pipes in the wall and some distant muffled TV from another room. My phone sat face down on the nightstand. I let it. If it buzzed, I didn't want to know. And it didn't. No texts, no missed calls. Not even a fake, "Did you make it home okay?" from someone trying to save face. I wasn't surprised. I scrolled through old messages, group texts where my name was never mentioned, unless someone needed help moving furniture or fixing a Zoom setting. My replies always had full sentences. Theirs? 1-word answers, usually late. I used to think it was just how families communicate when they're busy. Now I know, it was how mine made room for me, barely. Eventually, I opened social media without even thinking. Just reflex. Celine had already posted pictures from the party. There she was, beaming. Verna in a cream jacket beside her, glass raised. Grant a little blurry in the back, as usual. There were tags. Grateful for my tribe. Wouldn't be here without you. Family first. Family. I knew I was in that room. I stood right behind the camera during that toast. But in every single photo, group shots, candids, even the wide angles, I was gone. Cropped out. Or maybe never in. Then one image stopped me, cold. A snapshot of the hallway inside my parents' house. The lighting was familiar, the way the floor lamp by the corner always cast a shadow against the far wall. But the framed photo I knew used to hang there, the one from my high school graduation, had been replaced. In its place, a glossy new portrait of Selene and my parents, perfectly staged, smiling as if nothing messy had ever lived in that home. Even the dog was in the photo, not me, not even a shadow of where I'd been. That wasn't just an oversight. That was intentional. I dropped the phone onto the mattress and stared at the ceiling. I didn't cry. My chest ached, but not in a way that needed tears. It was quieter than that, like standing in a room after someone slams the door, but no one's coming back through it. After a while, I checked my PayPal balance, $287.34. Enough for maybe 2 nights at this motel, a few groceries, and some gas if I decided to keep driving. I typed a text to Mila. "I'm okay, just needed air." Then deleted it. She hadn't reached out in months. It wasn't her fault. But I didn't want to start that conversation on a lie. I thought about sending something to Verna. Something simple. That was cruel. Or maybe, "You didn't have to clap." But what would that fix? She knew what she did. I turned the lamp off, lay back without pulling the blanket up, and stared into the dark. Somewhere above me, footsteps moved in the ceiling. Pipes hissed. A vending machine outside buzzed every 5 seconds like clockwork. I whispered it to the empty room, just to hear it out loud. I don't think I was ever meant to be framed in that house. The sky was already turning that dusty shade of gray that comes right before the sun breaks through. I hadn't slept, not really. My body had gone still sometime around 4 a.m., but my mind never agreed to shut down. I must have stared at the motel ceiling for hours, counting the whirs of the vending machine, listening to the dull thumps from upstairs, waiting for nothing in particular. Then came the knock. Not loud, just 2 soft taps, like someone wasn't sure they should be doing it. I didn't rush to the door. If anything, I sat still for a few seconds longer than I should have, half wishing they'd leave before I had to engage. But curiosity outweighed pride. Just enough. I cracked the door open, and there she was. Mila. Hair pulled into a messy knot, dark circles under her eyes, holding something wrapped in an old dish rag. She looked like she hadn't decided whether she wanted to be seen or not. "Can I come in?" she asked, eyes darting around like we were meeting in secret. I stepped aside, not saying anything yet. Mila hadn't reached out since the last holiday season, when she texted a neutral, "Hope you're well," and I never replied. "I found this," she said, holding out the bundle like it might burn her hands. "It's yours." I peeled back the cloth. A tan envelope, my handwriting on the front, slanted, rounded cursive, the kind I only used when I was trying to be careful. It had a stamp. It had never been opened. My stomach dropped. "I sent this to my mom 2 years ago," I said, though I wasn't talking to her. "It was for her birthday." Mila nodded, looking down at her shoes. "I was over at Celine's yesterday. Verna had me waiting in the kitchen while she took a call. It was in the drawer, buried under a stack of old coupons." I sat on the edge of the bed and held the envelope like it was made of glass. I mailed it from my apartment in Greenville, bought a card, tucked in a gift card to her favorite cafe, wrote something soft, something I hoped would land. I paused. She never even opened it. "Yeah," Mila said. I figured. Inside was exactly what I remembered. Light blue card with a watercolor peony on the front. Inside, Mom. "If there's still a place in your heart for me, I'd like to sit there again. Not asking for everything, just a call. I miss our Tuesday talks. I miss you, love, Cressida." I closed the card and set it on the dresser. That letter had been a risk, a reaching out, a bridge I'd tried to build with the last bit of dignity I had left. And Verna shoved it under expired store discounts. Not neglected. Buried. Mila sat down across from me without asking. "This probably isn't my place," she said, "but—" "At Henrietta's funeral, Mrs. Jenkins, the neighbor? She told me your grandmother wrote you 2 letters. I looked up. "She only sent me one. The one with the pressed flower inside." Mila hesitated. "Jenkins said the second one came a few months before she passed. Said she remembered it because your grandmother read part of it to her. She thought you got both." But I hadn't. I never even heard of a second letter. I stared at the envelope again, then back at Mila. "So she's not just cold," I said slowly. "She's methodical." Mila didn't argue. After she left, I sat alone again, holding the pieces of something that was supposed to mend. And all it did was confirm the damage. I opened my laptop. My plan had been to dig through old emails, to see if I could track down any record of that second letter. But what I stumbled on instead made my hands go cold. It started with a folder I hadn't opened in years. EMH Archive. Empower Her. Back when it was still a draft, just an idea in my notes. I clicked it open. Inside, brand colors I chose. A diagnostic tool I built from scratch. Presentation templates. Even a sample workshop layout with my voice notes attached. I clicked through the files, my jaw tightening with every slide. I opened another tab, Celine's site. It was like looking at a mirror through a fogged window. Same headings, same color palette. Even the breakout session titles matched. She hadn't just stolen a theme. She lifted the architecture. I stared at the homepage. Her face was everywhere, Her quotes, her hashtags, her photo sitting cross-legged on a cream couch, surrounded by carefully placed books and plants, talking about empowering women through intentional strategy. My words, my model. Only my name was missing. I didn't yell. I didn't throw the laptop. I just started taking screenshots, one after the other, time-stamped, methodical, slide by slide, file by file, her homepage beside my original decks. I created a folder on my desktop, named it Proof Not Pain. Then I got up, crossed the room, and pinned the card from my grandmother beside the letter I had written to Verna. I stared at the two envelopes side by side. One held forgiveness that never arrived, the other, a plea for connection that never got read. And beneath them, the confirmation. They hadn't just ignored me. They'd erased me. They stole my work, I said out loud, voice steady. But they can't keep my name off it forever. I stayed seated for a long time after pinning those two envelopes to the wall. The room hadn't changed, but I had. It felt tighter somehow, not because it was smaller, but because I'd finally stopped pretending it was just temporary discomfort. This wasn't a pause. It was a shift. By mid-morning, I had the lamp back on, laptop open, and my email pulled up. There were 3 tutoring inquiries in my inbox. 2 from parents needing writing support for their high schoolers. 1 from an adult studying for their GED. I responded to all 3, professionally, without over-explaining. I wasn't in the mood to sell myself. Either they'd see the value or they wouldn't. The room was silent, except for the hum of the air unit and the gentle clicks of my keyboard. And then my phone lit up. At first, I ignored it. Another spam call, maybe. Then it rang again. And again. I flipped it over. Verna. I let it ring out. Then Grant. Then an unknown number. Within minutes, I had 5 missed calls. By lunch, I had 17. By sundown, the number had climbed to over 80. No one had contacted me in 2 days. And now it was like the whole house had caught fire, and they suddenly remembered I existed. I didn't answer a single one. The voicemail icon blinked, but I didn't listen. At least, not right away. I wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, one of those messages would sound different. That someone had decided to say something meaningful. But that wasn't what I got. The first voicemail was from Grant. It was mostly breathing, with a background shuffle, and the only thing he said was, "You need to call us back. Not want, not hope, need." The next one was Celine. "You can't just post things and pretend they don't have consequences," she snapped. "We're a family, Cressida. You're being petty. Again, don't do this." Click. I hadn't posted anything yet, just gathered proof. If they were panicking, it meant something had slipped. Maybe someone else had started asking questions. I was halfway through deleting the voicemails when the next one stopped me cold. Verna's voice. "Celine's in trouble," she said, her tone clipped. "Some blog picked up old school documents. People are connecting dots that shouldn't be connected. I need you to keep this from escalating." No, "Are you okay?" No acknowledgement of what happened at the party. No apology. Just, "I need you to fix what we created and pinned on you." It was surreal. Like watching a fire they started inch toward them, and instead of asking how badly I'd been burned, they were demanding I hold the hose. I opened my inbox again. Typed slowly. Subject. Empower her. IP documentation preparation. To Margot Ellis, attorney. Message. Beginning initial prep for intellectual property dispute. Documentation archived and timestamped. Will follow up by end of week. CV. I attached 4 comparison files and saved the draft under the folder I'd created that morning. Public-facing, evidence phase I. I didn't hit send yet. Not because I doubted it, but because for once, I wanted to be deliberate. Not reactive. Not emotional. Just exact. Then I opened my notes app and typed 1 line. I am not the fixer for the fire they lit. I copied that into a post draft too, just in case. After setting my phone to Do Not Disturb, I leaned back in the stiff motel chair, exhaled through my nose, and closed the laptop. If they wanted silence, they were going to have to earn it, because I wasn't giving it away anymore. 2 mornings after I stopped answering their calls, I was sitting in the shared workspace I'd reserved downtown, a converted warehouse near the library, with open windows and free coffee that tasted like wet cardboard. It didn't matter. It was clean, it was quiet, and most importantly, it wasn't theirs. I'd just finished reviewing a tutoring inquiry from a single mother in Winston-Salem when the front desk buzzed. One of the community managers walked over with a clipboard and a small envelope in hand. "You're C. Vale, right?" she asked. "This came by certified courier." I nodded, took it, and thanked her. The return address was printed in a clean serif font I recognized immediately: Ardith & Moore, LLP. Celine's legal team. Inside the envelope was a letter printed on ivory paper, thick enough to feel expensive. At the top, bold letters: time-sensitive, confidential settlement discussion. I scanned it. Their language was polished, but the intent was bare. A mutual resolution, they called it. They were offering to reinstate my name as a foundational contributor to Empower Her Academy. Not as a co-creator, not as intellectual property holder, just a footnote. In exchange, I would agree to remove any personal content referencing the brand, delete any pending statements, and most notably, sign a non-disparagement agreement. In other words, erase the truth, in return for a line in someone else's bio. At the bottom, a final paragraph: "We hope this resolution allows all parties to move forward in harmony without unnecessary public discourse." I laughed. Not out loud, but the kind of laugh that only happens when insult wears a silk dress and pretends to be polite. My phone buzzed again on the table. I didn't even look. The screen flashed unknown, but I knew the pattern by now. They weren't checking on me. They were checking their damage. I folded the letter, placed it back in the envelope, and slipped it into my backpack. That afternoon, I emailed Margot, my IP attorney. Subject line: ownership claim, timeline initiated. Attachments: calendar screenshots, original drafts, cloud file logs from 2021, and 2 comparison charts. An hour later, while organizing my files on Google Drive, I saw a notification pop up. An email from a woman named Brianna, someone I'd worked with on a nonprofit workshop back in Raleigh. She was now helping with the Women Who Built It Summit under Celine's banner. Her note was simple. "Hey, Cress. Thought you'd want to see this. I had to include it in our press kit, but it didn't sit right. Looks familiar." Attached was a PDF presentation. I clicked it open. There, under the acknowledgement section, was a paragraph attributed to Dr. Celine Ardith. A poetic, neatly worded tribute about building scaffolding for women to rise, not climb. I read it once. Then again. It was mine. Not just the sentiment, the exact phrasing from a birthday message I'd drafted for Celine 4 years ago. I hadn't even sent it. I'd saved it in my drafts and walked away, because even then, I'd known she wouldn't appreciate it. But somehow, it had made its way into her branding as her voice. My quote, my rhythm, her signature at the bottom. I opened both files side by side, her PDF on the left, my unsent draft on the right. Line for line, bullet for bullet. Even the line breaks were the same. They hadn't just taken my work, they'd weaponized it. I didn't rage, I didn't curse. I opened my scheduling app and confirmed a Zoom appointment with Margot for the next day. Then, in a clean Google Doc, I started a statement. Ownership is not a favor. It is not a gift. It is a record that exists whether or not it is acknowledged. I'm not seeking inclusion. I'm documenting what has always been mine. I closed the tab. I didn't call Celine. I didn't reply to the lawyers. Instead, I pulled up the Empower Her slide deck, took a screenshot, then pulled up my original deck from 2020. I started building something I should have made long ago, a column by column, side by side. Column A, their materials. Column B, mine, dated and backed up. I titled the file, not for attribution.pdf. I saved it into the same evidence folder from before. Then I opened my journal. I didn't write much. Just this. They think I'm fighting to be acknowledged. They're wrong. I'm fighting to stop being edited. The next morning, I skipped the motel coffee and headed straight to the library. The air was cool for spring, still holding on to the last edge of early morning, and the sidewalk felt quieter than usual. I parked in the rear lot, locked my car, and slung my bag over my shoulder like I had somewhere important to be, which I did. Not for anyone else's sake this time, but for my own. Inside the downtown Charlotte library, I requested a private study cubicle with tech access. The staffer at the front desk didn't ask questions, just handed me a small key with a number tag and pointed toward the back corner. Room 5C. Just enough space for a chair, a table, and truth. I plugged in the flash drive I hadn't touched in 3 years. The label on it read, Legacy V1, a name I chose back when I still thought building something for others would somehow protect me. As the files opened, I felt a calm that surprised me. No shaking hands, no racing heart, just focus. I scrolled through folders labeled Beta Deck, Pilot Framework, Voices Not Yet Heard. Each one held timestamps, notes, recordings, things I hadn't remembered saving until they blinked back at me like long-lost witnesses. And then I found it. A Zoom folder dated April 6, 2020. I clicked it open. The video launched with a grainy freeze frame of my face mid-sentence, one hand raised in explanation, eyes half lit by my desk lamp. I hit play. Okay, let's walk through the assessment phase, my voice said, crisp and measured. The idea isn't to label the women. We're identifying where they are emotionally, not just professionally. You can't coach someone into confidence if you don't know what's undermining it. There were 5 other faces on the call. One of them was Celine. She was nodding, eyes wide, jotting things down in a notebook. She didn't speak once in that segment. I watched another minute, then another. It was all there, my diagnostic rubric, my framework, the way I outlined the session flows, even the rationale behind the Empower Her name. I paused the video, took a screenshot, and pulled up Solani's most recent promotional clip on Instagram. I played them side by side. Her voice now echoed mine from 3 years ago. The cadence, the phrasing, the core idea. I opened my editing software. It wasn't fancy, but it would do. I dragged the original Zoom recording into the timeline, clipped the section where I explained the pillars, then layered it next to a snippet from Celine's polished ad. Split screen. Then I overlaid a simple white text on black at the end. Not all ideas need spotlights. Some just need credit. I rendered the file and uploaded it to YouTube on a private link. No title in all caps, no call-out post, just a caption. For context, no commentary. I copied the link and sent it in 4 messages. One to Margot, one to a former colleague who now taught at a local college, 2 to the parents of my current tutoring students. I didn't add a single word to any of them. The video would speak loud enough. An hour later, one of the parents replied, "This doesn't surprise me. My daughter told me you were the one who actually explained things in a way that made sense. This just confirms it." I sat back and let the weight of that settle in. Not flattery, just confirmation. I hadn't imagined my role. I hadn't exaggerated what I built. It was real. And now it had form. By late afternoon, I printed out one of the slides from my original deck, the one that outlined the entire Empower Her progression model, the piece Selene had posted on LinkedIn 2 weeks earlier as her signature structure. I framed it with a cheap plastic border from the library gift corner and carried it back to the motel. I hung it next to the grandmother's card and the sealed birthday letter to Verna. A triangle of proof. No drama, no shouting, just artifacts. They didn't look like much, but to me, they were more real than anything my family had said in the last 5 years. I didn't post the video publicly, not yet, because sometimes the most strategic thing you can do is wait. I opened my journal that night before bed, scribbled a single entry. I used to think the loudest voice always won. Turns out it's the one with receipts that no one saw coming. I closed the book and looked around the motel room. Same stiff sheets, same cheap curtain, same unreliable light over the mirror. But something had shifted. Not outside. In me. I hadn't burned the bridge. I'd drawn a map around it. The morning after I made the video public, I walked into my co-working space with a travel mug in hand, and a calm I didn't entirely trust. It was the kind of calm that comes before a storm you know you didn't cause, but will have to clean up after anyway. I sat at the corner desk near the back window, the one that overlooked the light rail. Trains passed every 20 minutes, always the same sound. Steady, indifferent. I opened my laptop and signed into my email. 2 tutoring confirmations were waiting, small wins. I replied, attached the lesson plans, and was about to dive into editing the next set of materials when I saw the notification. Reddit. I never used the platform much, but someone had tagged my name under a thread called The Bitter Sister, Inside a Family Feud. The top post was a long screed filled with phrases I'd heard before, just never strung together like this. She was given opportunity after opportunity. She wanted control, not contribution. Celine tried to include her, but some people are never satisfied. They didn't use my name directly, but the language, the tone, the cadence, it was Celine, or someone she paid. Underneath the post, the comments poured in. Words like jealous, unstable, attention-seeking. One even wrote, "Why do some people only come out of the woodwork once success hits?" That one hit deeper than I expected. I didn't respond, but I took a screenshot. 15 minutes later, Mila texted me. "Mila, you seeing this thread?" I replied with a thumbs-up emoji. She sent another message right after. "Mila, I think the Reddit account is linked to her PR firm. One of the handles is connected to an agency she tagged last year. I traced the email. It used to belong to a junior account exec. Now deleted." It didn't surprise me. Celine wasn't trying to prove I was wrong. She was trying to make me look too bitter to believe. I whispered to myself, when the truth is too strong, they try to dirty the mirror. I took one long breath. No pacing, no typing out a response I wouldn't send. Just action. I opened my legal folder and uploaded the screenshot under smear thread evidence.pdf. A few hours passed. I left the co-working space, grabbed lunch from a place down the street, and returned just as the next blow landed. An auto notification from my old domain registrar, empowerherhub.org, had officially transferred ownership, my first domain, the one I registered in 2020 and never got around to publishing. I let it expire months ago, thinking it had no use. Now it was tied directly to Celine's active campaign. I dug through the registrar's changelogs and found it. Transfer date, 6 months ago. The contact address? verna.whitlock@legacyhousemail.com, Verna. Of course. She didn't steal my content. She claimed the land it was built on before I had a chance to pour the foundation. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. This wasn't a family misunderstanding. This was strategy. They were making moves. So I would too. I filed a formal domain dispute with the registrar, attaching the original purchase receipt and creation records. Then I opened my YouTube dashboard and toggled the privacy setting on the video. From private to public. I didn't rewrite the caption, it stayed the same. No accusations, just dates, drafts, and proof. I don't want credit. I want truth to exist. That evening, while folding laundry back at the motel, I got a message from a colleague I hadn't spoken to in years. Lena G. 7:12 p.m. Hey, just saw your video stitched by O Teach with Clarity. That was surgical. If this is what I think it is, I'm on your side. A lot of people will be. I opened TikTok. Sure enough, a well-known educator had stitched the last few seconds of my video with a simple commentary. If this is real, and judging by these receipts, it is. This is the cleanest takedown I've seen in years. The sad part? It never had to go public. But folks don't listen unless you're loud or strategic. She chose strategic. The comments were rolling in fast. People asking questions, screenshots being shared, old blog posts resurfacing. Someone even reposted the Empower Her Summit video and highlighted how none of the original contributors were mentioned. And for once, I wasn't the one trying to prove anything. I was just still. I didn't call anyone. I didn't tweet. I let the narrative steer itself. By nightfall, my video had crossed 40,000 views. Not viral, not explosive, just steady. Clean. It wasn't vengeance. It was visibility. I knew I hadn't won. Not yet. But I also knew Celine was no longer steering the story. And as I rinsed out my coffee mug and set it upside down to dry, a knock sounded at my motel door. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't angry. It was careful, measured. The kind of knock that doesn't want to start a fight. It wants to stop one. I paused at the sound of the knock. There was a stillness to it, not tentative, but not bold either. It reminded me of someone who knew the door would open, just wasn't sure what they'd find on the other side. I set the mug down gently, wiped my hands on the side of my jeans, and walked over. When I opened it, there wasn't a camera crew, no lawyer, no letter. It was Riley. Riley Thompson, one of my former SAT students from 2 years ago. Back then, she'd come to me so anxious she couldn't look people in the eye. Now she was standing outside my door, holding a phone in one hand and a folded flyer in the other. "I hope it's okay," she said. "I didn't know where else to go." I stepped aside and let her in. She didn't sit at first, just looked around the small space. Card table, laptop, printouts still taped to the wall. Her eyes paused on the slide deck pinned next to the letter from my grandmother. "I saw your video," she said, "and I shared it." She didn't need to say more. My gut already knew the weight of what was coming next. "I made a stitch on TikTok, just talked about how you helped me with writing, how no one else took the time to explain stuff without making me feel dumb." She paused. "It blew up, like, completely." I sat down across from her. "How much are we talking?" She glanced at her phone. 1.4 million in 48 hours. That number didn't register the way it should have. I didn't feel famous. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt tired. But in a good way. The kind of tired that happens when you're no longer swimming against the current, just finally floating. Riley pulled up the video. Her voice on the screen cracked in that teenage way, full of truth and zero polish. "You know what? I owe her everything," she said in the clip. "And now I know where all those words came from. Her, not Celine." The hashtags underneath scrolled fast. Thiers credit the creator. Thiers empower her truth. See original, voice matters. I leaned back and listened, not to myself, but to the way truth made its own echo. Over the next day, the ripple kept spreading. Parents of old students commented. A few teachers reposted my resources. Even one of Celine's early collaborators, someone I hadn't spoken to since the pilot phase, posted a quiet but clear message. "Some of us knew. We just didn't say it loud enough." But then came the real shift. Margot, my attorney, forwarded me an email chain that had been accidentally BCC'd to her. The sender? One of Celine's major sponsors. Subject, urgent, review active ties with Empower, her. Due to increasing visibility surrounding ownership concerns and disputed content history, the Foundation is suspending all promotional materials tied to Empower Her until clarity is restored. Then, less than 30 minutes later, a second notification hit my inbox. empowerherhub.org. Domain locked for review. The registrar had frozen all updates pending ownership dispute. Celine's social media accounts went silent. The curated captions, the staged photos, the daily affirmations stopped. No apologies, no explanations. Just silence. Even Verna went quiet. For weeks, she had been the one behind the curtain, coordinating, pushing, smoothing. But now, not a single call, no email, Not even one of her passive-aggressive holiday forwards. And when her PR firm finally broke the quiet with a brief post that read, "We have concluded our working relationship with Empower Her Academy," I knew it wasn't just fallout. It was fracture. They didn't lose control of the story. They lost control of the center they built around it. I sat alone at the co-working desk, sipping my black tea from a chipped mug and letting it all wash over me. Not as a wave of victory, but as a confirmation. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't bitter. I was just right. No one called to say I was. No one said, "You were right, and we were wrong." But there were signs. One email, one retraction, one disappearing profile at a time. It was enough. Truth doesn't knock down the door. It doesn't scream. It waits. And when it stands, it's steady. I closed the laptop, packed up my materials, and left the office early that afternoon. Walking back to the car, my phone buzzed again. Not another sponsor, not a journalist. Just Riley again. Riley. Someone in the comments asked why you're not part of the official Empower Her story. I told them, because she wasn't supposed to be visible. But she is now. I stopped on the sidewalk, the spring breeze lifting the hem of my jacket. No more battles, no more edits. Just truth. And the last person to knock? They didn't come to challenge me. They came to ask a question no one in my family ever had the courage to ask. I held the door open, not with caution, but with a strange kind of curiosity. Mila stood there in jeans and a denim jacket, holding a plain envelope like it carried something breakable. She didn't speak at first, just handed it to me with a look that didn't ask for permission or forgiveness. "She didn't tell me to give this to you," she said quietly. "I found it cleaning out a drawer at Verna's house. It was wedged behind a stack of warranty papers and old checkbook covers." I took the envelope and nodded once. Mila didn't stay long. She didn't have to. Back inside my new office, I sat at the edge of the desk and turned the envelope over. My name was written in careful cursive, the kind Henrietta always used when she wanted her words to feel soft, even before you read them. I didn't tear it open. I unfolded it gently, like a memory being let back into the room. Inside was a letter written in her usual style. No paragraphs, just line after line of quiet clarity. "If they ever silence your name, plant it somewhere else. Let it grow in peace. You were never meant to fight for room at their table. You were always meant to build your own. No bitterness, no warnings. Just the kind of knowing that comes from someone who saw you fully, long before the world decided how small you should be." I folded it back and placed it inside a small acrylic display stand, next to her original letter. It didn't feel like closure. It felt like restoration. 3 weeks had passed since the sponsorships dropped, since Selena's campaign unraveled quietly. No statements, no press releases, just absence. Her accounts were private now. Her brand partners had moved on. Even Verna had gone still. The power she wielded in silence had finally collapsed under it. I hadn't heard from them since. Not a word from Grant. Not a fake apology text from Celine. Not even one of Verna's veiled "hope you're well" messages. And yet, I wasn't angry. I wasn't even waiting for anything anymore. The new office I was renting was modest. A second-floor walk-up tucked between a coffee shop and a real estate agency. One big window, a donated bookshelf, a desk I built myself with instructions that didn't come in English. On the wall behind my chair, I framed 2 things: Henrietta's final letter, and a note from a girl named Avery, one of my newer students, written in pencil, folded 3 times. She believed I could, so I did. That was the win. Not the views, not the documents, not the whispers online turning in my favor. The win was in becoming someone I never had. A few days after framing that note, I launched a small scholarship in Henrietta's name. Nothing flashy, just enough to help students like Avery who needed someone to say, "You're not too late." The first recipient was a girl who once told me, "I stopped raising my hand because people only look surprised when I get it right." I mailed her the award with a handwritten card. Some letters get buried, This one is meant to bloom. I didn't go to the ceremony. I didn't need to. There was no spotlight, no applause. But she sent a photo afterward, her holding the certificate, standing under a banner that read, "First to graduate." I looked at that picture longer than I expected to. Back in the office, I kept working, planning curriculum, sending invoices, drinking too much tea. I didn't block my family, but I didn't reach out either. Forgiveness wasn't on the table, but neither was vengeance. Some pain doesn't scream when it leaves. It just fades. And that's the thing no one tells you. Sometimes, peace doesn't feel triumphant. It feels quiet. Celine was gone from the stage she built with my bones. Verna, from her throne of image and subtle cruelty, was just another woman in a quiet house with too many mirrors. I didn't hate them. I didn't need them. They never said sorry, but I stopped needing it. And sometimes the loudest justice is simply, I'm still here, and I'm still building. Before I end this story, I want to speak to you, not as someone who went through it all, but as someone who came out the other side. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Silence isn't always weakness, and being erased doesn't mean you cease to exist. Sometimes the world doesn't clap for your wins, not because they weren't real, but because you weren't the one they wanted to see succeed. And yet, here you are, still standing, still building. If you've ever felt like your name was left out of the credits, your work overlooked, or your voice dismissed, this story was for you. And maybe you're not looking for revenge. Maybe, like me, you just want the truth to live somewhere where it can't be edited. Now, I'm curious about you. Have you ever been pushed aside for the sake of someone else's image? Or felt like your quiet strength was mistaken for absence? I'd love to hear your story. Maybe you're the Cressida in your family, or maybe you're someone who finally saw the Cressida in someone else. Let's open this conversation up. If this story touched something in you, drop a 1 in the comments, or just tell me where you're watching from. I truly want to know. And if it didn't connect with you, I'd love to hear why. This is a space for real talk, and your voice matters here. And hey, if you want more stories like this, real voices, quiet power, and hard-earned healing, subscribe to the channel. Don't miss what's coming next. Because the truth, we've only just begun.